It happened on a Friday evening, one of those slow, golden-hued nights when time seems to stretch just enough for reflection to slip in unnoticed. My husband, Mark, had invited me to a formal dinner hosted by his company, some sort of celebration. For a successful quarter, if I remember right. I didn't know many people there beyond the polite hellos exchanged at holiday parties. But I've been to enough of these to recognize the key players. Mark was always charming in those settings with his firm handshakes and gentle jokes. He moved around the room easily, checking in with colleagues and laughing at just the right pitch. I mostly hovered near the buffet table, sipping my wine and smiling when someone nodded in my direction. My heels were starting to ache. I remember thinking I should have worn the navy flats instead of the kitten heels that matched my dress. That's when I noticed him, Daniel Prescott, the boss. Not just Mark's boss, but the kind of man whose presence quietly demands attention without ever needing to raise his voice. Tall, silver-haired, with a posture that spoke of decades of confidence. I'd met him once before, briefly and only enough to shake hands and say, "Pleasure to meet you." This time, though, he was looking right at me. He approached slowly, as if careful not to interrupt whatever thought I was having, and offered a soft smile. "Eleanor, right?" he said. His voice was deep but gentle, like an old jazz record playing in the background. "Yes," I replied, surprised. He remembered my name. "Nice to see you again, Mr. Prescott. Please," he said, motioning lightly with his hand. "Call me Daniel." There was a beat of silence. He glanced over at the crowd, then back at me. "Would you mind stepping out to the balcony for a moment? It's quieter. I just wanted to share something with you privately, if that's all right." It was unexpected. I hesitated. For a second, more out of confusion than concern, then nodded. "Sure." The air outside was crisp. We stood by the railing overlooking the city lights. The murmur of the party faded behind the glass doors. Daniel leaned on the railing beside me, taking a deep breath like he needed the moment as much as I did. "I hope I'm not overstepping," he began, "but I wanted to speak to you because I've seen the way Mark talks about you." I blinked. "Oh, he chuckled softly. "That sounded strange, didn't it?" "What I meant was, you've had an impact on him. A good one. He speaks about you with a kind of reverence I don't see often, and I notice these things because I suppose I've missed that kind of connection in my own life." I wasn't sure what to say to that. His tone wasn't flirty, not inappropriate, but it carried a weight I didn't expect. Like he was sharing something he didn't offer easily. "I lost my wife 8 years ago," he said suddenly, his voice lower. "Cancer. She was the quiet strength behind everything I did, and since then I've kept my distance from people. Professionally, I've done fine, but personally I've been somewhere else entirely." I looked at him then, not the boss, but the man, and saw it in his eyes, that familiar tiredness, the kind that comes from staying strong for too long. "I guess seeing you tonight reminded me of her," he added, "not in how you look, but in how you carry yourself. There's a steadiness in your eyes." It made me think of who I used to be when I had someone beside me. I stood quietly, heart a little unsure of how to beat. There wasn't anything romantic in his voice, but there was something human in it, a kind of longing that echoed in my own chest in ways I hadn't realized until just then. "I'm sorry if that's too much," he said. "I just wanted to say it out loud, that you remind someone like me that connection still exists, even if it's just through a conversation on a quiet balcony." I swallowed. "That's actually very kind, Daniel. I think we all need reminders sometimes, that we matter, that we're still seen." He nodded slowly, then looked out again at the city. "You're exactly right." After a pause, he glanced back at me. "Would you mind walking a little?" "Just around the terrace. I'd like to hear more about you, not through Mark's stories. From you?" And I said yes. Not because I felt flattered or curious, but because something inside me wanted to be heard too. We walked slowly along the edge of the terrace, away from the lights and gentle music inside. The night was cool with a soft breeze that carried the scent of blooming jasmine from the planters lining the walls. Daniel kept his hands in his pockets, giving me space, which I appreciated. There was no pressure, just presence, a quiet kind that felt both unusual and comforting. I've always liked nights like this, I said, unsure why I felt the need to fill the silence. Calm, unrushed, makes you feel like the world isn't spinning so fast. Daniel smiled, looking ahead. That's exactly what I've missed, those small moments. That used to feel so natural. I think I let too many of them slip away over the years. We reached a quiet corner where the string lights didn't quite reach, and the city skyline opened up beyond the railing. It was beautiful in a quiet sort of way. We stood side by side, the distance between us just enough to feel respectful, yet close enough to feel like we were in something together. So, he said gently, tell me something about you. Not about Mark. About you. That caught me off guard. No one had asked me that in a long time. At least, not without some kind of expectation behind it. Well, I said, pausing. I used to paint, not professionally, just for myself. Landscapes. Mostly watercolors, but I haven't picked up a brush in years. I guess, why'd you stop? He asked, his tone genuinely curious. I'm not sure, I said slowly. Life got busier. Then quieter. Then routine. You forget the things that made you feel like you. Daniel nodded like he understood that deeply. That's the hardest part, isn't it? Losing pieces of ourselves while we're too busy taking care of everything else. I felt something soften in my chest, a warmth I didn't expect, not romantic. Just being seen. Understood. What about you? I asked. Besides running an empire and making nervous small talk at company dinners, he laughed. It was low and real and warmed the air between us. I used to write short stories, he admitted, nothing serious. Mostly just to sort through thoughts. I haven't written anything in years. I didn't see the point without anyone to share them with. We stood quietly after that. Not awkward, but full, the kind of silence that held meaning. You know, he said, eventually you have this presence about you listen fully, you respond thoughtfully. That's rare. I think I just learned to notice things that don't get said. I replied, maybe that comes with age. Or maybe it comes from spending enough time in the quiet. He looked at me then, not. The brief, polite glance from before, but a real steady look. His eyes weren't searching for anything. They were simply holding the moment. And maybe for the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to hold it back. I hope this doesn't sound strange, he said after a moment, but I think he reminded me. That connection doesn't have to be grand or loud. It can be a simple walk on a terrace with someone who doesn't expect anything from you. That struck something in me because I wasn't used to hearing it put so plainly. So earnestly, I don't know what this is, I said softly, but it feels good. It feels real. Daniel nodded again, as if we had reached some quiet understanding. It does. And that's enough for now. We turned and walked back toward the warm light of the party. Not because we wanted to, but because life always gently nudges us back to where we're expected. But something had shifted between us. Not in a dangerous or dramatic way, but in a subtle, undeniable one. And somehow, I knew that whatever came next wouldn't just disappear with the night. The days that followed were quiet, at least on the outside. Mark went back to work, and I slipped into my usual rhythm, morning coffee, errands, laundry folded neatly while the afternoon sun spilled across the kitchen table. But inside, something stirred, a subtle hum I hadn't felt in years, not excitement, not guilt, just awareness. Of myself, of the way I'd been moving through life on autopilot. Mark mentioned Daniel in passing once or twice that week, nothing unusual. Just updates about a meeting or an upcoming project. I listened, nodded, smiled like always, but I didn't mention the terrace conversation. Not because there was something to hide, but because I didn't know how to explain it without it sounding like more than it was. Then on Thursday, I got an email. It was from Daniel. Short, simple. Eleanor, I hope it's okay that I'm reaching out. I've been thinking about our conversation. I felt something that night I haven't felt in a long time. Calm, connected. If you ever feel like continuing that conversation, even just over coffee, I'd welcome the chance. Warmly, Daniel. I sat with the message for a while. Read it twice, then. Again, my hands hovered over the keyboard, unsure of what to do, but deep down, I knew I wanted to reply. I typed carefully. Daniel. Thank you for your note. I've been thinking about our talk too. It stayed with me in a way I didn't expect. Coffee. Sounds nice. No pressure, just a quiet corner and a chance to finish a conversation. Let me know when works for you. Eleanor. We met at a small cafe tucked away from the busy downtown streets. It was cozy, quiet, wooden tables, the smell of roasted beans and fresh pastries in the air. I arrived a few minutes early, brushing invisible lint from my blouse and pretending not to be nervous. Then he walked in and everything settled. He looked more relaxed than I'd seen him before, a bit less polished in a good way. Less executive and more real. Thank you for coming, he said, sliding into the seat across from me. I almost didn't, I admitted. I wasn't sure if it would feel strange, does it? He asked gently. I thought for a moment. No, it feels calm like before. We talked for nearly an hour about nothing and everything, books we loved, moments we missed. The odd comfort of being understood by someone who didn't owe you anything. At one point, he leaned back, cradling his coffee cup. You said something the other night about forgetting who you are when life gets busy. That's been ringing in my head. I think I forgot to. For so long, I was just the boss or the widower, or some version of a man trying to keep moving. I know that feeling. I said being everyone's something, and forgetting you're still someone too. Our eyes met. There was no heat, no hunger, just connection. Deep, soft, and honest. The kind that doesn't demand anything. The kind that reminds you you're still whole. When we stood to leave, he paused beside me at the door. Eleanor, he said. I know this might be complicated, but I'd like to keep talking with you. No expectations, just a friendship, if that's what it becomes. Something that gives us both a little more than we had before. I took a breath, long and steady. I think I'd like that too, I said. And I meant it. Not as a woman seeking something she didn't have at home, but as someone rediscovering parts of herself that had gone quiet for too long. As I walked back to my car, I didn't feel conflicted or guilty. I felt present, more than I had in years. And I knew that whatever this was, whatever it would or wouldn't become, it had already given me something valuable. A glimpse of myself. A few weeks passed, quietly, gently. Daniel and I exchanged occasional emails, short and thoughtful. Links to an article he thought I'd enjoy, a photo of a watercolor, painting he saw at a gallery that reminded him of something I once described. Nothing inappropriate. Nothing hidden. Just connection. The kind you don't realize you've missed until it shows up in unexpected ways. Mark was none the wiser. Not because I was lying, but because there wasn't anything to confess. What Daniel and I shared wasn't a secret. It was simply something I hadn't found the words for yet. One morning, I found myself in the attic rummaging through boxes I hadn't opened in years. And there it was, my old watercolor kit. Brushes still neatly wrapped, the colors slightly cracked but usable. I stared at them for a long time. Before taking everything downstairs and setting it on the kitchen table, the light was perfect. Soft and golden. I dipped the brush in water, pressed it into a pale green, and let my hand move. It wasn't perfect, but it was me. Later that day, I sent a photo of the painting to Daniel, a quiet hillside scene, just a sketch of one, really, but it felt like reclaiming something I thought I'd lost. He replied within the hour, "It's beautiful. Not just the painting, but what it represents. I'm glad you're finding your way back to yourself." That evening, Mark noticed the painting sitting out and looked at me curiously. "Did you paint this?" I nodded. "First time in a long time." He smiled. "I always thought you had a gift. It's good to see you doing it again." And that moment, his smile, his genuine pride, reminded me of something important. This wasn't about choosing between two people. It was about choosing myself again. And in doing that, I was bringing a fuller version of me back into every part of my life, including my marriage. The next week, Daniel invited me to an art event downtown. "I think it might inspire you," he said. "No pressure." I thought about it long and hard, then politely declined. Not because I didn't want to go, but because I felt something shift. I no longer needed him as a mirror. I could see myself now. I wrote him a message. "Daniel, thank you for the kindness, the space, and the unexpected clarity. You helped me hear a part of myself I hadn't listened to in years. I hope we'll cross paths again, but for now I think I'm exactly where I need to be." He didn't write back right away. What he did, it was just one sentence. "Then I consider myself lucky to have been a part of your rediscovery." Life returned to its usual pace, but I was no longer drifting through it. I was present, aware, reconnected. I painted more. I laughed more. I looked Mark in the eye when he spoke, and I listened not out of habit, but with intention. Sometimes unexpected moments don't lead to chaos or scandal. Sometimes they lead you back to the parts of yourself you forgot to nurture. And sometimes that's more powerful than anything else. I'll always remember that night on the terrace. Not as the beginning of something with someone else, but as the beginning of something quietly profound within myself.